for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
I'm Katy Steele.
And I'm Jack Prince.
Boy, we got a packed show today. We're going to get right into it in just a minute here. Before we get started, a couple reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com by doing a search for Southpaws. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, WOOL Bellows Falls, Vermont, and KEPJ San Antonio, Texas. And, of course, if you have a local Pacifica station, please donate your time and or your money. They could always use the support there. Real quickly, before we get going here, we do have an update from a show that we did a couple of weeks ago. It's an update regarding Brandy Levy, the cheerleader who was suspended from the squad. We have this. This is Adam Liptak writing for the New York Times out of Washington. This is dated June 23rd. The Supreme Court ruled Wednesday that a Pennsylvania school district violated the First Amendment by punishing a student for a vulgar social media message sent while she was not on school grounds. It was an 8-1 ruling. The only dissent, Justice Clarence Thomas. The decision did not establish a categorical ban on regulating student speech outside of school, citing the need of school systems to be able to deal with issues like bullying and threats. Instead, it set out factors that courts should assess in weighing the rights of administrators to punish speech in non-school settings, with one important component being whether parents are better suited to handle the situation. But it was the first time in more than 50 years that a high school student won a free speech case in the Supreme Court, and the decision emphasized that courts should be skeptical of efforts to constrain off-campus speech. So, very good news there. Sorry, there is no age limit on the U.S. Constitution. Students have rights too. Period. End of story.
Even female students.
Absolutely.
That's stretching it.
Yeah. And
I know, right?
Well, I know what you're talking about. And, of course, you're discussing the way the schools regulate what a student wears, specifically women.
Specifically women, because we're very distracting.
Oh, very distracting.
Or what they can say at
Yes.
the commencement exercises.
Yes, or if we talk too much at all, generally.
I think there needs to be a lawsuit in Pennsylvania, and I'll tell you why. I just saw it on my news feed this morning. There was a valedictorian student at a high school. He was giving a speech. He's LGBTQ, and he was talking about that and some of the mental health issues that he has had. Mm-hmm. The principal got up behind him during the middle of his speech, cut off his mic, and grabbed the speech, wadded it up, and tossed it.
And he went out with memory.
And pointed at a pre-approved speech and said, "You better read from this." The student read his original speech from memory.
Nice.
And basically just said, "Screw you" to the school district.
That's not the only incident like that this spring.
Yeah.
It's been happening across America.
Yeah, exactly. I got news for you school administrators. You better watch out, because that's another lawsuit and you will lose.
Yeah, but also we need to, as parents, we need to watch who our school administrators are. I know in my own district right now, at my son's middle school, and I just actually read in the paper yesterday that the entire city is spending over 50% of our city's budget on police. But you can definitely see it within the schools because all their money is going to security systems, and they have a uniformed police officer stand out front, and the actual administrators themselves look like police, spend all day talking to police, and make the kids feel like criminals. So if we keep letting those people become our administrators, our superintendents, our principals, our teachers, then that's what we're going to get. We're going to get jail, not public school.
And the teachers now can't say anything about racism or slavery.
Right.
And they have to declare their political perspective in some states if the law continues as designed.
We will get to that in our Hammer Time segment. Yes, we have 2 winners this week.
The dissolvement of church and of the line between church and state is, happening fast.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, so this is a very good ruling, 8-1. Again, Clarence Thomas, not a big surprise, dissenting.
And I love the ACLU shirts they're selling that say F cheer, F softball, F school, F everything.
Good,
Yeah.
That's good for them. Justice Stephen Breyer, writing for the majority, said part of what schools must teach students is the value of free speech. He wrote this, quote, America's public schools are the nurseries of democracy. Let me stop there and repeat it. America's public schools are the nurseries of democracy. Our representative democracy only works if we protect the marketplace of ideas. Schools have a strong interest in ensuring that future generations understand the workings and practice of the well-known aphorism, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Humanity has an interest in that, not just schools. Humanity. You know, when you look around the last few years, some of the best things that have happened of actual movements have been inspired by those moments when we were all in 2nd and 3rd grade. We were reading history and we were going, what would I have done?
That's where you learn citizenship. Remember, you can't talk when Jimmy's talking, but now in front of a computer screen, you don't have that arrangement.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about. So citizenship has started at the youngest grades.
So true. And they're just eliminating it as a whole. People don't even understand we're losing it.
Right.
Justin Driver, a law professor at Yale and the author of The Schoolhouse Gate, Public Education, the Supreme Court, and the Battle for the American Mind, said, quote, the opinion reaffirms that schools' authority over the lives of students is not boundless, end of quote. But he added that the nuanced ruling, which raises as many questions as it answered, quote, offers little in the way of clarity to students, educators, or lower court judges, end of quote. So it sounds crystal clear to me. If a student says something off school property, off school hours, that is not bullying or threatening people, you can't regulate it, schools.
Well, that's the thing. They want to hold on to that decision that they made when they ruled against the students wearing the black armbands who were protesting the Vietnam War. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. They overturned a lot, or, they made precedent here, but they did not overturn that decision because they want to hold on to that ability. Should we decide to rally up and do something for Black Lives Matter, they want to come out as a Supreme Court and be able to say, oh, no, you're actually affecting the way the school is run as a whole. And so now we can't allow this. Now you're going to go to jail or you're going to be punished.
Yeah.
It's sick. Like, we shouldn't celebrate this. We should say it's not far enough.
See, we've often said that to the conservative, the freedom that they really want is to be dumb. Freely. They can be dumb.
Free to be dumb.
But also, to them, when you talk about critical thinking, you know what they really hear? They think that you should be critical of thinking. Do you understand the difference in that? And I'm not making that up. I've heard them say that.
No, I believe that. Because I've always wondered what they hear.
Yeah. So this kid that stood up, this very honorable and heroic young man,
right?
You have a right to criticize his thinking. Do you understand?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that what DeSantis is doing now?
Yeah, he's criticizing his thinking. He's doing critical thinking. Yeah, they hear critical and they think criticize.
Yeah, that's what they hear.
That's exactly
I know
it.
It's incredible.
No, I believe that. That is a very simple explanation that answers a million questions.
Yeah, so this is good news in spite of what I've had comments on our official Facebook page.
It's good news, but I still think we can go further, and we should push for further. Now that I think about the fact that they're still holding on to that. I remember reading the article and going, wait a minute, How is it that they can still punish students for out of school speech? And that was the case that they cited, was the actual armbands. And I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yep. And people commenting on the story that we posted can call her a spoiled brat. They can call her disappointed. She's never faced disappointment. Time to grow up.
That's what they say about any young woman that you put on the news. That is
those are
the male chauvinist storyline.
There's one that's a woman that's saying
I know.
it.
Trust me, there are plenty of women who have adopted, branded, and helped push forward the male chauvinist storyline. It's the only reason it works so well.
They can deflect as much as they want. The bottom line is the students have rights guaranteed to them under the U.S. Constitution.
Yep.
That is a period, end of story. Bottom line, not going to change. No matter how much you want to control your kids, sorry, not going to happen.
Yep.
Oh, boy. You mentioned DeSantis. Before we get into our Hammer Time segment, there's another story that's come out of Florida this week. Absolutely horrible what's going on in, I believe it's Lakeside, Florida, where the condo
Surfside.
building collapsed.
Yes. That was so hard to
Surfside,
see.
Florida. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, officially 4 dead as of the time that we're recording. We're recording the show on Friday, June 25th, 2021. They believe about 100, maybe over 100, unaccounted for at this point.
I had first read it yesterday. When it first announced it, they just said they weren't sure who was missing, and they had one official dead. And then they listed that there was some roof work going on at the time of the collapse. I didn't read further to see if it was confirmed, but I was looking at the picture and questioning if there had been a crane on the roof.
There's mention of that. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
It looked like it could have been, but
I was telling Jack this morning, from the aerial shot, it looks like the parking lot is sagging in. I have a suspicion that it might have been a sinkhole that opened up.
Oh.
Because there has been talk, and the news says, yes, it's confirmed, then they say, no, it isn't. They said that building has been sinking 2 millimeters a year for, since the 1990s.
Oh, my. And, yeah, we've got similar issues going on here, even on this side of town with the ground. Well, we have so much limestone. It's the limestone that causes those sort of sinkholes.
Yeah.
Those areas with a lot of that. I would not be surprised if that's what it was.
Yeah, so prayers to everybody down in Surfside, Florida that is going through this or has loved ones down there.
Praying they get them out soon and
You see
find
pictures.
who they can.
Here's a bedroom cut in half with the bed near the edge. I mean, they literally may have fallen out the side of their bed to their death. It's incredible.
They were saying that it was almost a full building at the time it happened.
Yeah.
I want to know if it was a low-income apartment
No,
area
it wasn't.
or if it was a higher.
They actually showed the inside of one of the apartments before this happened. Inside Edition did last night. These are some pretty pricey apartments.
Oh, wow.
Chandelier in the room, and
There was a doctor in one of the apartments. The sister of the first lady of some country.
So it was,
Venezuela.
Oh, wow.
Venezuela.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
so there's relatives of the Venezuelan president that are missing in this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like I said, we're hoping for the best, but really the way it looks, you kind of have to note you pretty much say the worst is going to happen.
Hopefully
here.
there are some miracles, though.
Yeah, the rescuers are saying that they've been hearing some tapping. So hopefully there's still some people.
I can't even imagine. That is the worst, to me, the worst possible thing that could happen to anybody.
And looking at the video of it collapsing, it really brings back images of 9/11.
Yeah,
because
that's
the
what I
building
think of.
The pancaking of the floors. Yeah. Oh boy. Well,
Oklahoma.
let's get into something a little more lighthearted. But in order to do that, we need to play the appropriate music.
Stop! Hammer time!
Yep, it's hammer time. And it is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got 2 winners this week, so you know how it works. Every time we have 2 winners, we got to play this.
The double douche. Who is that guy? Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy sh**. Exactly right.
Yep. Oh, here's what Wade Garrett has in store for us this week. Winner number 1 is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. I have this story. This is Brett Bachman writing for Salon Magazine. This is dated June 23rd. Public universities in Florida will be required to survey both faculty and students on their political beliefs and viewpoints, with the institutions at risk of losing their funding if the responses are not satisfactory to the state's Republican-led legislature. The unprecedented project, which was tucked into a law signed Tuesday by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, is part of a long-running nationwide right-wing push to promote intellectual diversity on campuses, though worries over a lack of details on the survey's privacy protections and questions over what the results may ultimately be used for hover over the venture.
Intellectual diversity. I'm just going to stop right there really quick and point this out because way to hijack a phrase.
Yeah.
I can see your body recoil from here.
Yeah.
Intellectual diversity. What they mean is smart and a whole bunch more dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Means
a little
just the
sprinkle of
opposite.
smart and a whole bunch of dumb because that's diverse, right? And then we don't have to talk about race.
Yep.
That's it exactly.
Yep. Based on the bill's language, survey responses will not necessarily be anonymous, sparking worries among many professors and other university staff that they may be targeted, held back in their careers, or even fired for their beliefs. Because you know that's going to happen. If this is allowed to stand, that's what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Because diversity is handpicked.
Yeah.
See, I just have a question.
Yeah.
With all of the remembrance of the Ministry of Truth in 1984 and all of the dystopian pictures of what a fascist state would look like, do these people not have any ability to recognize what this is?
That their own fascism, like,
Yeah, I mean,
Do you think any of these people, the support... Now, I'm sure that higher-level Republicans have read 1984.
I watched 3 professional-looking white men climb into a Nazi SS police car a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And no, they
Just
had
down-
no idea.
you don't think they're too worried.
I don't think they had any idea that throwing people in a gas oven might be a problem. I really don't. I think in their head.
I guess when you're driving a Nazi car with a
not a
symbol,
problem.
SS symbol on the back, right?
yeah,
I think I
on
saw-
front and back.
Your appearances don't mean much. But there would have to be some segment left in Florida that would say, because that's the prototype image of fascism.
It is. Yeah. Like I said, upper-level Republicans have read 1984. You think the people that follow these and support the Republican Party have read 84? Probably not. I'm surprised they can even read a goddamn book. You want my honest opinion.
Well, who was it, though? Thomas Jefferson, who said the man who can read has nothing over the man who doesn't? Or no, the man who, you know what I mean?
We'll have to find that.
And reading is not analysis, and reading is not grasping the truth. Reading does
Exactly.
not promote that at all. In some
the man
cases,
who
it
can't
retards
read
it.
has nothing over those who don't.
According to the bill's sponsor, State Senator Ray Rodriguez, faculty will not be promoted or fired based on their responses, but as the Tampa Bay Times reported Tuesday, the bill itself does not back up those claims. The only details on the survey come via a passage over its purpose, to discover, quote, the extent to which competing ideas and perspectives are presented, end of quote, at public universities, and whether students, quote, feel free to express beliefs and viewpoints on campus and in the classroom, end of quote. So this is done with the idea that they're going to push free speech. They just want to push the speech they want you to hear.
Yeah, again, like-
because that's how violent conservatives work.
Yep.
That's how you steal free speech, you know? That's how you push the state media is by, you know, tailoring what people are allowed to say.
At a press conference following the bill signing,
That's the
DeSantis said, quote, it used to be thought that a university campus was a place where you'd be exposed to a lot of different ideas. Unfortunately, now the norm is these are more intellectually repressive environments. You have orthodoxies that are promoted and other viewpoints are shunned or even expressed, end of quote. Jack, you're a former educator. What do you think about
Well, I'm going to go back
DeSantis'
to
quote?
Katie's comment real fast and then address that. You know, she said something that is so profound yet so simple. The Republicans know that thinking is on the table that ends up in votes electing people that aren't fascist, right? So the last resort of control is a man's mind.
Yeah.
The very thing that you always insisted really nobody could invade.
Right.
But obviously they know that they can.
Yeah. And they have successfully.
And somebody more sophisticated than Ron DeSantis knows these techniques. All he's doing is pushing for legislation so they can get their fingers in on your thinking process.
Precisely. And I'm sure you've seen the hearings. I don't remember the gentleman's name who spoke up against the Capitol rally or the Capitol riots, basically, and said, I want to understand it. He said, I've read Marx, I've read Lenin. It doesn't make me a communist.
Right.
He said, I'm trying to understand why, what would make somebody do this. And that's exactly what we all want to know because we know it's something. And we've talked about what it is on this show.
Yep.
It's software, it's algorithm. They are reading and they are researching and they are using that technology to manipulate the masses.
Yeah. They really are. And now you see it in, as you mentioned, education, where not only do you have to quote your political viewpoint or your thinking perspective, you're, I guess, under arrest if you stress slavery in the history of the United States.
And you're being documented with the amount of security we have in our schools. You're on camera.
Somebody asked me, give me an example, they said, of critical race theory. And I said, well, here's a good example. I taught in journalism class that the GI Bill only was applicable for white soldiers. When the soldiers got back that were white, Caucasian, they could take advantage of the GI Bill. Unbeknownst to half of my class, which was Hispanic or black, the black soldier did not have access to any of the educational opportunities through the GI Bill, which sounds draconian enough, right?
They had to fight just to prove they were American, just to prove they were patriots.
But the white soldier on a low interest rate came back in 1945
to the property who they had successfully stolen from the natives 50 years earlier.
Got it at a great interest rate, right?
Yeah.
Yep. and started an investment that by the time my generation was born, the baby boomers.
There was a generational wealth that was amassed.
Exactly. Yep. And the poor black soldier
had nothing. Their parents were probably still in prison, or they were in prison.
Right.
And it just keeps happening over and over and over.
Now, that is empirical. That is historical.
Yes.
You can't deny that happened.
No. And you cannot teach history at all without teaching a total lie, without saying it.
And that's just one bill. That's just one bill. And then you could also trace that because the guy, the soldier, came back and could not buy a house, okay? When it's in his 50s and his 60s, he hasn't got any money, and he's depressed, and he starts drinking, and then he leaves the home, and then the child has no father, and then the same white guy who was given a house, he comes back and says, these people aren't capable of having families.
Yep.
It's indicative of the black race, et
exactly.
cetera, et cetera.
Then they take their children,
grows.
They put them into the system, and it just keeps going over and over and over.
Yep.
And they did it to the Native Americans just the same exact way.
Well, that's got me. I can't wait till we talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a few minutes here. Continuing the story again, this is Salon.com. Republicans have long held that universities promote left-wing ideologies and discriminate against conservative students and staff. Yeah, tell that to anybody down in Hillsdale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Though the bill does not specify what the survey results will be used for, both DeSantis and Rodriguez suggested that the state could institute budget cuts if university students and staff do not respond in a satisfactory manner. DeSantis said, quote, "That's not worth tax dollars, and that's not something that we're going to be supporting moving forward." End of quote. You know who he reminds me of when he says that? Ronald Reagan in California.
Yeah, very much.
Because college education used to be free in this country. California changed when Ronald Reagan was the governor. And when he said, I don't want to pay for some goddamn hippies at Berkeley to get educated.
Yep.
That's pretty much a direct quote.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When pressed by reporters, the governor did not offer any specific examples of repression and discrimination faced by conservative students, simply saying that he knows, quote, a lot of parents, end of quote, who worry about their children being indoctrinated on campus. Well, yeah.
How much money were we talking about here that he wants to?
He's talking about cutting budgets.
Did he say how much?
No, he didn't. This is all they purposely make this vague.
Right. I'm mind blown right now because I'm reading this article about the Florida Keys, right? We were just discussing how the seas are rising, and this is written by The Guardian. It was put out Thursday, June 24th. It's called "The Water is Coming. Florida Keys faces stark reality as seas rise."
Oh, God.
Written by Ali Millman. Basically, they're discussing, it says, following a grueling 7-hour public meeting on Monday held in appropriately named city of Marathon, officials agreed to push ahead with a plan to elevate streets throughout the Keys to keep them from perpetual flooding, while admitting they don't have the money to do so.
Wow.
Hold on, though. This is the trip. $1.8 billion. This is a county. This is one county in Florida. They're putting $1.8 billion to raise the streets for the Keys. Even better.
They know what's coming.
Even better. You already know what's coming. Can't save them all. Can't save them all. We're going to have to save the people who can afford to put the rocks out in front of their place, the people who can afford to raise their yards, the people who can afford to save their foundations, but they're not going to have the money to save it for everybody, so they're going to have to make some hard choices. And I'm reading this, and my head just wants to explode. Nobody gets to make any choices. You've already made the choices.
Well,
yeah.
The officials already put that money, they've already dedicated it, and they've already said, it doesn't make sense to save you poor people.
it's amazing. If you go to Key West, Hemingway's house, which is a beautiful home.
Historical.
The
So they'll
reason
save that.
They built that was because it was so high. It was on a
Yes,
hill.
it was the highest point in the Keys.
Highest point in the Keys. I think it's 2 feet above sea level.
Yes.
It's a mountain.
Yes. Yes. And these places were not.
They've made a mountain out of a molehill, almost literally.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, it's so crazy, though.
Yeah, it is.
Well, they have underground state parks. Now we can just have underground Keys. Visit the Keys
There
through a
we
glass
go.
bottom boat.
There we go. They're like, it's fine because they all have yachts, the people they're really
Sure.
worried about. So
Yeah.
they can just boat over to their other place and they'll be good.
Oh, boy. Florida's, let me read this to you. Listen to this. Florida Senate President Wilton Simpson was more pointed in his criticism Tuesday at a meeting of the State University System's Board of Governors, calling the institutions socialism factories, again without much detail on what makes the school so left-wing. According to the Tampa Bay Times, he said, quote, "We always hear about the liberal parts of the university system, and we don't hear so much of that from the college system." End of quote.
Socialism factories.
Yeah, socialism factories, yeah.
Do you guys remember Churchill, Professor Churchill?
No.
Yeah, this was a liberal professor back 5-6 years ago. And the conservatives were rallying because he was kicking them right in the face, right?
Yeah.
And his students would back him up. I think it was at University of Colorado. But anyway, they went in. I think it was the same guy that did the smear job against the parenting group. Do you know the name?
Mother or the
Yeah.
Moms Demand? No.
Yeah. Anyway, he would go in and tape lectures from Churchill and then edit words and came up with whole speeches that he never said.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how they brought him down.
And nobody could verify again.
Nobody
proved that it was fake.
Exactly. Because,
Oh, wow.
he would say something in his speech. Well, this morning out here as I look out the window of our classroom, because he said that in one speech. But then
Right.
the next thing would be
Something completely different.
And boy, I sure hate the looks of those conservative buses or some bullshit. And
Right.
excuse me. But nonetheless, it was a completely let's say a silk purse out of a sow's ear. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And he lost his job. And the guy that orchestrated this then did the same thing for how they used to loan money to poor people or something.
Oh my gosh. So the cancel culture started long before the left.
Oh yeah, this is at least 5 years ago.
Oh my. We should really bring that back, how the cancel culture actually was rooted in complete fake fraud stories, because that sounds to me like exactly where it came from.
In addition to the survey, the bill also prevents officials from limiting campus speech that, quote, may be uncomfortable, disagreeable, or offensive, end of quote. A measure that, as Democrats in the state legislature pointed out, will also make it easier for groups like the KKK or the Proud Boys to hold events on campus. In a conversation with the Miami Herald this April, Barney Bishop, one of the top lobbyists pushing the bill in Florida's state legislature over the past year, shone a light on the justifications behind such measures, which he said were less about intellectual diversity and more concerned with maintaining the country's conservative Christian identity in the face of younger, more diverse generations that share a dimmer view of religious right-wing orthodoxy. Bishop also told the paper he certainly hopes the effort will expand into the K-12 system over time. He told the Miami Herald this, quote, "I think the problem isn't just in higher ed. The truth of the matter is that kids are being indoctrinated from an early age. I think that those of us who have diverse thinking and look at both sides of the issue see that the way the cards are stacked in the education system is toward the left and toward the liberal ideology and also secularism. And those were not the values that our country was founded on. Those are the values that we need to get our country back to." End of quote. And I'll just say it right here. This asshole needs to crack open a book and start reading about the real history of this country, because right-wing orthodoxy was not what this country was founded on.
Well, I just have to marvel at the world we live in with the restrictions on thinking, on speech. I have to ask these very intelligent people here sitting with me if they realize that if we don't curb the filibuster and stop the restriction of voting rights, we're in for guaranteed authoritarianism. I don't see Biden doing a damn thing.
No, I see him helping.
Some rhetoric here and there. And we're on the edge.
I think that Biden is on board with the authoritarianism, and that we cannot allow this next election to occur as the last one did, or the one before that, or the ones ever before that. Like, we cannot let it happen.
And we can't rest thinking that's going to solve our
right,
problems.
Exactly. We cannot
election.
come out and let people argue for either side of this election and act like that is a solution, because we know it's not. We know it is just wasting time we don't have, and it's one step closer to authoritarianism. Should we have that long? Because I'm looking around and I'm continuing to see the U.S. smeared by everybody else in the world. Rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rightfully so, based on everything we're doing. It's getting worse every day. And this is what happens when you're the target. We're the new target. I mean, I feel like they are wiping our resources out of North America because maybe North America isn't a part of their future plans. I don't know. But when you look around, you have to start asking these questions, because what happens when you are the enemy of everybody on Earth? Mm-hmm. We've seen a few other countries in this situation, and it doesn't generally end well.
Exactly.
But they're hearing these quotes in Europe that these colleges are factories for socialism. Look
at the 21st century plan. Even the superintendent of East Kentwood High School, the largest and most diverse high school in the state of Michigan, which Michigan's probably the most diverse state in the country, our superintendent is on board with this 21st century plan. And if you look into the 21st century plan, it is a plan to privatize public schools.
That's exactly what it is.
The only people getting hired as administrators in schools right now are on board with this plan. Yeah. If you want to be a county commissioner, you have to be on board with this plan. Wow. This is how it works. I've had the county commission talk to me about this face to face. I've had the superintendent of Kentwood Public Schools look me face to face and tell me he was on board with it and was only supporting people who were on board with it. When I looked it up, it is literally a program to privatize public education. I was disgusted.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that is the line they've drawn for county government, for city government, for state government, because that's where we're going, privatization. They have the balls.
Yeah, listen, Katy, there are very few people, even so-called progressives, that really have a respect for what privatization means. And they really don't get it.
Yes, and half of it is because they have done such a great job at destroying public institutions. Because if you destroy them badly enough, then people need a solution.
Yeah, Jack, we have rightly criticized Abdul al-Sayed for supporting private schools, private charter schools.
The Democratic lingo was, we are against charter schools for profit. Which is like saying we
like nonprofits. Yeah. That's what they're saying. Oh, we know you do.
Right. If you get cancer in your fingernail, we're against that. Yeah. Meanwhile, the rest of your organs, we don't give a damn about.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Our second winner of Hammer Time this week is Texas Governor Greg Abbott. I have this story. This is Axios from June 19th. Texas Governor Greg Abbott vetoed funding for the state's legislature on Friday, as he promised to do earlier in June, after state Democrats staged a walkout to protest and block a GOP-backed voting reform bill. No, let me rephrase that. Republican-backed voting bill. There is nothing grand about that party. There never was. Funding is no longer lined up for the entire state legislature, including the paychecks of state lawmakers and their staff members and the budgets of legislative agencies, though it is unclear if the unprecedented veto is constitutional, according to the Texas Tribune. State House Democrats in late May broke quorum and prevented the chamber from passing Senate Bill 7, a sweeping overhaul of elections in the state that in part places numerous restrictions on several types of voting in the states. Voting advocacy organizations, civil rights groups, and state Democrats have warned the Texas bill targets people of color and marginalized groups. Major corporations like Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, and Unilever have urged state lawmakers to reject the bill. Abbott has threatened to call the legislature back for a special session to pass the overhaul bill. According to the Texas Tribune, Abbott said in a statement that, quote, funding should not be provided for those who quit their job early, leaving their state with unfinished business and exposing taxpayers to higher costs for an additional legislative session. I therefore object to and disapprove of these appropriations, end of quote.
So I feel like we're being sucked in again.
So
I feel like we're being pushed to advocate for these legislatures, these members to be paid because they did their job correctly, and I cannot advocate for that. I don't think any of them should get paid ever. I do not think you should get paid to be the president of the United States.
No.
I don't think you should be paid to be in Congress, right? I don't think you should be paid to be a county commissioner or a housing commissioner or a city council member. I think if you truly are a community or a democracy or a republic, that everybody has a responsibility of service to it, and that we should have a community that allows for that and that compensates them for that without it being in a paycheck form. You know, this is just the reason we're here.
And
so Abbott's the single winner. He's a dual winner?
Dual winner, yeah. Him and DeSantis.
Well, you know, the thing that I get a smile out of, I got a text from a friend that the slang word now for crazy. Like if you live in Sweden and you back through your garage door because you didn't open it, you go to work and you go, you'll never believe what Texas thing I did today. The slang word in Northern Europe for crazy is Texas.
I want to know what Florida means.
Yeah. Listen it. Right here. Think of it.
Right. Toilet?
That's the most Texas thing I've ever heard.
What? Texas could be
well,
that could be Florida.
You can carry a gun
that
now.
very well could be.
Any age? Is that restriction? You can open carry in Texas. Anybody.
Oh, gee.
Anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
No license, no check, no background.
Somebody, you can just hand your kid a loaded gun and hope they take them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, if you don't like somebody, you just hand your kid a loaded gun and hope they
little kids
take
used to
them
wear
out.
gun belts with cap guns and all that?
Right.
Yeah,
Who needs
there
a
you
cap
go.
gun?
Now
I
you do
mean,
it at
geez, I
50.
got some people I'd really like them to point it out. Like,
Yeah, here.
because you can't sentence a kid, right?
Oh, there you go.
Here's another one for Florida. You mentioned it.
Perfect.
That's good. A lot of water there. That's perfect.
Hey, maybe it'll help lower the sea level so you keep flush.
Hey, we've got answers on this
works
show.
The other way.
Don't
Yeah.
think we can't answer problems.
Yeah. House Democratic Caucus Chairman Chris Turner, in a statement, called Abbott's veto an abuse of power. He added, quote, Texas has a governor, not a dictator. The tyrannical veto of the legislative branch is the latest indication that Governor Greg Abbott is simply out of control, end of quote. Well, he's right there.
I think they're all out of control. Everybody's out of control.
Alongside restrictions on forms of voting, the bill also includes provisions that would raise criminal penalties on election administrators and workers for committing loosely defined offenses during elections, according to the state's United Democracy Center, a bipartisan organization created to protect democratic norms. One provision, for example, makes it a felony for an election worker to solicit a person to submit an early voting ballot application unless the official knows that the person had already requested an application. The bill would also make it easier for losing parties to contest election results and gives courts the ability to overturn those results in certain cases. So, yeah.
Why are they going after election officials, though, when that is the least of our concerns about rigging the election?
Wow.
We've seen that they haven't rigged the election with the vote counts. They've been rigging the election by manipulating people's thoughts and their minds and their group mentality.
Yep.
So I feel like they're putting all this attention on these election numbers when never once did anybody ever say that our elections were breached.
Yeah. Didn't the GOP in Michigan just come out with a dogmatic statement?
I'm going to get to that story right now, but let's go ahead and finish the segment up here. So for Ron DeSantis in Florida and Greg Abbott in Texas, congratulations on winning this week. We have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Yeah, that's right. 2 peas in a pod, as I told Jack before we started recording.
Poop pod.
2 peas in a pod.
2 peas
And I'm
in
going
a
to
poop
predict
pod.
they could be the overall yearly winner. This pair.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned this story. I've got it right here. This is Tom Perkins writing for The Guardian out of Detroit. An investigation into the Michigan election by state Republican lawmakers has concluded that there is no evidence of widespread fraud and dismissed the need for an Arizona-style forensic audit of the results. By the way, in Arizona, they're looking for bamboo in the ballots. Literally, they're looking for shards of bamboo because they said that ballots were sent here from China.
Yeah.
Literally looking for bamboo.
I am just...
Cuckoo! Cuckoo!
I swear I see Attorney General Dana Nessel talking about how she is supporting legislature like for cracking down on election officials if there should be any fraud or tampering with ballots or anything like that. I'm questioning again why.
Well, she's going after the attorneys.
Oh, is it the attorneys that filed the lawsuit?
That lied, yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense to me. Thank you.
Like Rudy Giuliani. Well, I guess we can't call him a lawyer anymore. His law license got suspended indefinitely.
You can just call him a movie actor.
Finally,
Getting caught
he
in
was.
bed
Yeah, that's
with,
all he ever was.
Remember unzipping his pants in Borat 2 or whatever it was.
Oh, I'm tucking my shirt in. Yeah,
but that
sure
that you
Rudy.
read to me, they should have that behind airplanes. You know, at the beach where they pull the banner.
Yeah, yeah.
That, really, Michigan, absolutely no fraud. Hey, Arizona, you bamboo searchers, no fraud, no fraud at all.
But this is what we were looking for because the Democratic Party, a week after Trump won, was standing in public meetings talking about election fraud. Talking about Russia, talking about the FBI, and that's why we lost. So it was not just pushed by Republicans. This was literally spoken from 2 county chairs' mouth to my face. And it's
Seriously.
the reason that I flipped out, in public.
Wow.
I stood up and I screamed at them. This was the first time I spoke in public about politics. I was so angry because it's a packed room, and they're trying to explain how they lost. Hillary Clinton lost this election because of Comey, because of Russia, and because of tampering with the election. And I stood up and said, this was not the FBI, it wasn't Russia, it wasn't election fraud. This was you not giving a candidate that anybody could vote for.
More baggage.
We went in there and I
American
cited the
Airways.
numbers of almost
Bingo.
100,000 people who walked into the poll and didn't vote for either.
That's exactly
And they couldn't
right.
say anything.
We were saying it right in the show.
1.75 million in 2016 across 33 states and the District of
97,000
Columbia.
just in Michigan.
The highest is favorable percentage of any Democratic candidate for president in history.
She only needed 10,000 votes, and we had 97,000 people show up that did not select a candidate.
They didn't vote
I'll
in that
correct
square.
you on the figure. 140,000.
Oh,
It
they
was
must have
more.
corrected it later because
Then they
it
had
was
200,000 in Florida. That swing state. They couldn't hold their nose long enough.
Yeah,
to
you're
vote.
looking at 10 times more. And then they were talking about how we had to get people to the polls, and I had to shut them up on that too. Like, no, we got 10 times more people than you needed to the polls, and they couldn't pull the trigger because you gave us such a bad candidate.
Deja vu. We were talking about it right here, weren't we?
That was,
How many years ago
And
now?
I was just discussing this recently because Rachel Hood who is now, what is she now?
State rep, isn't she?
Okay, at this time she'd run for drain commissioner and lost. And I walk into my first Dem Party meeting, and she is sitting down. I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
I sit down next to her,
God.
though. But it's a county convention Democratic meeting, and so they're voting, and there's a bunch of progressives who I know from watching them during the Bernie campaign on Facebook getting elected to the board of the Kent County Democratic Party, and it's going well, and we're excited. And all of a sudden, Frank Lynn, county chair at the time, stands up, pounds his gavel, and ends the meeting. And everybody gets pissed. And he says, I'm really sorry, but, we're running out of time. We got to get going. And Jeff Winston stands up, and he helps him. And Tracy Cornack is there, and she does the same thing.
man.
It turns into all three of these people bullying us out of the room.
There's the three amigos right there.
Yeah.
The weasel, the bully, and the...
This was my first experience ever walking into a political meeting ever.
And the word that I can't use on FCC-regulated airwaves that rhymes with hunt.
Well, so then I didn't say a
Tracy
word.
Cornack.
Yeah, I don't.
Let me remind everybody that Tracy Cornack called into this very show when we were still on the air in Kentwood, while you were in Philadelphia, Jack. Reporting for us, called in under a fake name.
So this would have been a month or two before the convention I'm citing. Yeah.
I was at the protest outside of the convention center.
Yeah. And so this was right a week after Trump was elected, and it's all happening. They shut it down using Robert's rules incorrectly. And I look over at Rachel Hood, who's just a random lady sitting next to me, and I'm asking her, what's going on? Like, why did they end it? And she's like, because she had actually jumped in to support ending it. And I said, what's going on? Why is it ended? And she said, well, otherwise we're going to be here all day. And I totally assumed there had to be some better explanation. So I'm staring at this lady like, is she serious? And then, it all plays out and we move on. And I ended up going back and protesting later, and I found out who she was later, and it all made sense.
What a lineup. Winston, Cormack.
That's what they do. They bully you out of...
Who was the head of the Democratic Party here in the state before?
Brandon Dillon at the time.
Dillon
yes.
was.
And
Did you ever hear me and Dylan's conversation?
Let me tell you about ours when you're done.
Let me hear yours first, because oh man, it was.
He brought Keith Ellison here, Representative Keith Ellison, to talk to us. And Keith Ellison, he yelled at me, like attacked me for questioning him, and I had to show him where the door was. Literally said to him, "There is the door if you don't want to be here." And Brandon drove him to the meeting, so he was ready for me. But Brandon Dillon, at one point during Progressives in the Park, I went up to talk to him about doing a healthcare meeting. And he screamed at me, "Why are you even talking to me?"
Seriously.
In my face. And Winnie Brinks was standing right next to me. And I looked at her and I said, "You think you're going to get reelected with people like this?"
Yeah.
And she wouldn't even say a word to support me. He was screaming in my face, "Why are you even talking to me? Go away. Get out of my face." And I was like, okay.
Yep. By the way, just for the record, Brandon Dillon at one point was the guest with the most appearances on this show. He will never be on the show again.
He called in the day that I was on a different radio show here in town because he knew I was going to be on. So he made sure he called in.
Wow. Yeah. This is how it works.
I want to hear about Jack.
In the Democratic establishment here in third congressional district, folks. I've been the victim of them.
They're horrifying.
And one of these days, I'm going to have it out because I'm still putting down what I swore to. By the time I'm done, by the time they plant me 6 feet in the ground, I'm going to make sure at least 1 or 2 Democrats are in prison.
I wanted to lock up Keith Ellison, but
I used to drive around and listen to Darren on the radio.
Okay.
And I was greatly enamored by his viewpoints. But one day he said, "I'm not going to give another damn penny to the Democratic Party."
Let me repeat the quote. "I will never give another goddamn penny to the Democratic Party ever again." That was after they screwed Bernie in Arizona.
And I said to Sharon, "There's a guy I could work with."
By the way, Tracy Cornack called my boss at the time at the radio station and asked him to fire me, which he eventually did 7 months later.
Yeah, she does seem to have that
So
power.
fast forward it now. I'm out in Philadelphia, and it's 100 degrees. And we marched in every protest there was, right down.
And they got 12-foot fences, and you can't get anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, and we're exhausted. But we're not too exhausted to go to the very last protest as the delegates were coming in. We're screaming about Bernie.
I'm watching you at home on live stream.
And they raised a fence up 12 feet, and we're on this fence.
Okay.
And I completely lost my voice. I was so physically exhausted, I had to be helped literally back to the car. We drove to, where's the Amish capital? Someplace, Lancaster County.
Okay.
Get a little room, and it's like we've been in a battle. So I'm calling Darren.
Right.
And Alicia Fagan calls and says, Jack, I went to a breakfast thing for Bernie.
That was when Brandon took the mic.
And Brandon took the mic from my hand. Wouldn't let me even introduce who I'm a delegate for.
Right.
And there's more delegates in the room than for Hillary.
Right.
I still have the picture of that because I reported on that too.
Yep.
Anyway, I was so exhausted, but it was like a jolt of electricity. I jumped up out of bed. What? I let Darren know, and I said, Darren, I'm going to call him.
Nice.
I'm going to get a hold of Brandon Dillon. I don't care when or how.
Right.
It was an hour-long screaming match, but it was
nice.
It was refreshing to my soul because, and I've never seen him since or talked to him. And we knew each other because his wife was a teacher.
Well, his ex-wife.
Oh, his ex-wife.
Yeah, but I do know he was married, and then he is no longer.
Supposedly, if you knew everything sexual peccadillos going on in Lansing, you would be shocked and amazed.
I have had friends who have worked down there, and I've heard this.
Yeah, so hopefully somebody decides one of these days to publish a book. You know what? If you got this information, come to me. I'll write a book. I don't care.
Right.
Screw these morons. The news comes amid a broad push by many Republicans from Donald Trump to state parties to push unfounded lies about Joe Biden's victory, often promoting baseless conspiracy theories and evidence-free accusations of fraud. By the way, let me just add, this is the same Michigan Republican Party that said that there's no evidence of widespread fraud that is pushing legislation to restrict your right to vote in the state of Michigan. The same exact people.
But don't worry, because Joe Biden has their word. And that's all he really needs. That's good enough for him.
Jesus.
Are we going to have time to touch on the 750 bodies discovered?
Oh, my God. We definitely need to talk about that.
Yeah.
What's happened in Canada. This is in Saskatchewan. This is in British Columbia. We talked about British Columbia a couple weeks ago.
That was 251 there.
This is over 700 in Saskatchewan. A mass grave of Indigenous Canadians.
That means they didn't just take these kids and send them to the schools and kill them or let them die.
They
didn't even send them home dead.
No.
They didn't even tell their families a lot of times.
They had vague excuses.
They had no idea or a vague excuse for what happened to their kids.
Many of the bodies they found were impregnated.
Yeah.
Of course.
Even better than that, there's stories coming out from these schools of students who saw these priests taking these babies from the girls that they impregnated and burning them.
Yes.
Like an incinerating
And this is
them.
where Bethany Christian and Catholic Social Services were founded.
And the Catholics,
this is where they came from. It was to hide these babies who, like I said, I'm pretty sure my mother was one of them.
70% of these schools in Canada were run by the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes.
The other 30% were run by the Protestant Church.
Catholic Social Services was the CPS agency, the adoption agency, the foster agency, up until I visited my mother for supervised visitation at Catholic Social Services on Leonard. It's now a mercantile bank. So, I mean, they have been in the business of stealing children for over 100 years. And before that, it was these schools.
And this was an untapped market.
And after these schools, it was the schools for the women who got pregnant. Because, first they were taking the babies and then getting the kids pregnant. And then eventually they were just, when they were getting the teenage women and the young women pregnant, they were ending up in the schools, in the homes.
The official number out of Saskatchewan is 761 in this mass grave.
It was the only way they could uphold this BS story of the Bible and still maintain their power.
Yeah, that's exactly it. To me, this is the George Floyd incident of racial abuse to the minorities in North America. Forget the boundaries, because we got our own graveyards here. And how symbolic, really, that the WASPs, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants with the long black dresses or whatever, buried their crimes. Buried it, and it's sat buried for decades, and it's being brought to light. It's incredible that they even use the word God. I am
That's
not
it.
a believer in Christianity. That's not the point.
Right.
Okay.
It's not the,
I
it's not
believe
the
some
point.
of the
The point
principles.
is the blatant lies.
Yeah,
The hypocrisy.
in Christianity, but
How
nobody.
can nobody address that? How can you say those things,
Yeah.
hear those things, and nobody ask and address it?
You could stand for Mother Pie,
Yeah.
but if they're in your closet of history, you were killing babies that you impregnated a young girl with and then killed them both. I don't care how benevolent. I don't care how many turkeys you hand out. I don't care how
Right.
many football teams you have at Notre Dame.
You are
I
not the principal, like,
No matter how many Hail Marys you say,
Yeah.
yeah.
but that's so important. You have to have this idea, this perception of heaven and hell in order for them to maintain their power, and they have to control it, because
Oh, yeah.
otherwise they're going to end up
Yeah.
in hell in the perception, and that's not going to work either.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a great story, New York Times. This is by Ian Austin and Dan Bilefsky, and they go right into it. Let me read a portion here. They had a commission that looked into this, the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was established in 2008 to investigate, expose, and document the history and consequences of the residential schools. They called the practice cultural genocide.
It was.
Canada had about 150 residential schools, and estimated 150,000 Indigenous children passed through these schools between 1883 and 1996, when the final one closed up. They said it's unclear how the children died at the church-run schools, which were buffeted by disease outbreaks a century ago. The children faced sexual, physical, and emotional abuse and violence. Some former students of the schools have described the bodies of infants born to girls impregnated by priests and monks being incinerated. The commission estimated that about 4,100 children went missing nationwide from the schools. But an Indigenous former judge who led the commission, Murray Sinclair, said in an email this month that he now believes the number is well beyond 10,000.
Yeah.
Because you know that they
if you're
hid
from Michigan,
a ton of this.
I'm going to drop a name for you. Stanislaw Burr. Stanislaw Burr was a priest who was born over in Bay County in the Thumb area. He was probably born 100 years ago. He died probably 10 years ago. He was on Dana Nestle's list. But I've found through Ancestry him connected to several adult adoptees around the same age as my mom.
Yeah.
So there's one example, and they were adopted through the Catholic Social Services Agency as well. There's one example of one person, but I mean, even he has family that has his last name that's connected through Ancestry. This is going to come out. They're not going to be able to hide this.
No,
we have
no,
the
not at
science
all.
now to where it's going to come out. If I don't bring it out, if my story doesn't bring it out, somebody that's connected to me will. Or
This is the
connected to
tipping
this will.
atrocity.
Exactly.
We
They
know
see
they've been
it.
abusing kids
Yep.
for decades.
We know they have, and now we're going to see that this entire thing,
Yep.
all of it was built to hide that.
We know they tortured people in Europe. We talked about Torquemada on this show.
Absolutely.
Nobody had ever heard of them
They
before.
talk about the sanctity of marriage.
Yeah.
They talk about virginity. They
it's
talk
the
about
greatest fraud
they
ever
shame
perpetuated on
humans,
mankind.
Yes, all day and night for not being born and able to live for one person when never have any of them had that ability.
Yeah. This
And
is
they
a
knew it.
smoking gun, Katie. This in front of the crucifix
Yep.
is a smoking gun that can pull this whole charade down.
And that's why we're at a point where I'm not lying to my kids anymore. I tell my kids, don't buy it.
No, and that's the thing. Other parents need to tell their kids the whole truth on what has happened in this country, the history of this
Yep,
country.
where we are and who we are, all of us.
Yeah, because if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Bottom line.
We've heard that before, so. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this week. I can't believe an hour has passed this fast. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
I'm Jack Prince.
Please support independent media and the First Amendment.
Stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.